America is not a racist country.
So much focus have been on the Ukrainian refugees and the coming to the country and all the perks and bells and whistles they're getting. And we seem to forget there are many Black migrants that are in U.S. ICE detention centers, and they sure are not getting the red carpet rolled out for them at all. So, this is a detention center in Louisiana, and Black asylum seekers are saying they are facing a lot of violence from guards that are there. And, they're, it said being in those those ICE detention centers, it's very anti Black, and a lot of racism is going on in those ICE detention centers. All right. So they're doing this in a system that have a long time history of mistreating not only their citizens here, but even foreigners. So they're not getting the Ukrainian treatment. So in the fall of 2020, there was a person by the name of Brandon playing FIFA 2020 video game in a rec room. And this was at LaSalle Correctional Center in Louisiana, where he has been locked up in there for being here illegally for the last 5 months. An El Salvadorian man was watching the action over Brandon's shoulder and started joking around, covering Brandon's eyes and distracting him from the game. It was annoying, said Brandon. He is an asylum seeker from Cameroon. He lifted up his hand to mock punch this guy. The horseplay never escalated to anything serious. And after a little while, this guy that he was, was that was bothering Brandon from Cameroon, he left. So a few minutes later, guards entered that same rec room and approached Brandon. They told him he was being transferred to a new dorm, which means away from fellow Cameroonians and other Africans that he befriended. Brandon was asking to stay where he was. Being with other Cameroonians was a lifeline for him in the detention center. He said, I felt like family with them, he said calmly, and continued trying to explain himself, never even raised his voice. So Brandon was walking down the hallway and was being followed by these three guards. As he approached, one of the guards grabbed him. He was walking towards the camera. They had surveillance in there. One of the guards grabbed him by the shoulder and pushes him against the wall. In the next few minutes, they rammed his head into the wall, put him in a chokehold, spinned him around on the floor, threw him on the floor, and pinned him down. One of the guards briefly put his knee on Brandon's neck. With the guard dog, all piled on top of him, he felt like he was fighting to survive. He said, you know, he, he said he was struggling to breathe, he couldn't move, and I was feeling so weak. And he said, this is how many of the Black immigrants are treated in these detention centers. Six guards from the LaSalle Detention Center, which is privately ran by LaSalle Corrections, kept Brandon pinned to the floor as one of them slapped handcuffs on him. They then yanked him to his feet and pushed him back against the wall. Why are you treating me like I'm not a human being? Brandon was asking. After the guards tackled him, Brandon was thrown into solitary confinement where he remained for 3 days. Brandon suspected bias was at work when the guard shoved against him, and he was doing it because I'm black and from Africa, Brandon said. LaSalle Corrections did not respond to the repeated requests. So, ICE spokesperson Sarah Loicano, she also declined to discuss the specifics of Brandon's case, but U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement does not tolerate the mistreatment of anyone in its agencies, custody, and takes all allegations of abuse seriously. Y'all sound like the police. I don't know why y'all keep giving out these statements. You know damn well nothing you said is true. The allegations of misconduct by ICE employees or contractors are reported to ICE Office of Professional Responsibility and are reviewed by the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of the Inspector General, which they're not going to do nothing. Some African guy getting abused at an ICE detention center, they're not going to do nothing about it. Months later, after 2 transfers, Brandon was finally released from detention and allowed to continue pressing his asylum case while out on bond. When he opened his package of personal effects, he was surprised to find an unlabeled CD tucked within his clothes that he'd been wearing. So he was wearing this shirt the whole time he was in custody. Damn, 5 months with the same shirt. It took him a few weeks to find a player, but when he finally did, he discovered it was the video of the guards tackling him. He has no idea who slipped the CD in his belongings. Brandon was born in Cameroon, a country in West Africa, and since 2016, he has been locked. You know, the Cameroon has been in a civil war. Okay. And the government's crackdown, including there's been killings that led to charges of genocide. At the age of 26, he fled the country after his mother was killed by government agents, and he subsequently was targeted. They tried to extinguish my life, he said, but I never participated in anything like politics. In August of 2019, he crossed the U.S. border into Brownsville, Texas, and told Customs and Border Patrol officers that he was seeking asylum. He was promptly handcuffed and taken into custody. Soon thereafter, he was sent to Louisiana, the country's incarceration capital, and more recently, host to a vast network of immigrant detention facilities. According to Brandon, the mistreatment of detained Black people at LaSalle went beyond physical violence. It was more pervasive, more constant than any explosion that could be caught on camera. Officers didn't attend to Black detainees, Brandon explained, trying to capture the extent of the discrimination. They didn't give us the same privileges. While we saw other detainees occasionally get a little extra food, 1 or 2 additional slices of bread, or new razors for shaving, Black detainees were rarely, if ever, on the receiving end of these gestures. Brandon's story points to a bigger problem: the increasing criminalization of immigrants, which has meant migrants and asylum seekers, men and women, have not been convicted of any crime, but they are placed in jails and prisons, sometimes for years. They are also subjected to punishing conditions like solitary confinement, medical neglect, unpaid labor, and the kind of excessive force by guards that prison reform advocates have long documented and decried. So, yeah, so they got the Africans and people from the islands that are here illegally working for free up in the prisons, the plantation after chattel slavery. The prisons became the new plantation. So that's what they're sneaking and doing with these immigrants from Africa and from the islands that are here illegally. They're making them work in the prison system for free. Wow. And you want to know why everybody is not upset that your world is falling apart. All right. Advocates tracking the scope and severity of the abuse of the immigration detention center can be daunting. Latinos are ensnared and sometimes mistreated at rates higher than any other demographic, but the U.S. immigration system levies particular violence against darker skinned migrants, no matter their ethnicity. The number of migrants from Africa and the Caribbean showing up to or crossing the US Mexico border has been increasing in the last decade, leading to more detentions for Black migrants, and advocates claim greater chances of abuse born out of bias. Detainees are frequently kept out of view by being locked up or swiftly deported, and their stories are rarely heard or come filtered through the NGO report or the official complaints to the government. The treatment of Black immigrants is normalized so much to a point where departments and staff are numb to it, said Alan Morris, an attorney for Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. Morris said that he's heard other Black migrants suffering from similar racist abuse at LaSalle, where Brandon was detained, but this was the first time he's seen a video of himself being tackled by these ICE agents. Mm-mm-mm. So I'm not surprised, but isn't it just funny how they're rolling out the red carpet for the Ukrainian refugees? But look at what they're doing to these immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa, physically abusing them, mistreating them, and making them work for free in the prison system. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's definitely a world of difference in how they're treated. Mm, mm, mm. I'm not surprised. We don't hear these stories enough to even know what's going on in these detention centers because they're very good at hiding things in America. If somebody like Brandon don't, leak out this information to the press, you don't know. And in many cases they don't want to hear these stories. That's why you never heard about what really happens to many of these folks when they're here illegally from Africa and the islands. And we already saw what they did to the Haitians. They had people on horseback whipping on them like they were runaway slaves. That ain't gonna happen to the Ukrainians. They're trying to load them up with money and giving them a place to live here rent free. That's what they're doing for them. But y'all, please tell me what you think. This is America. This is who America really truly is. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.